Hi, my name is Robert Dickey, and this is part B, the second half of the video for EPA2, English for Public Administration 2, 행정영어 2, for the class meeting of October 4. Before you watch this video, probably you should watch the part A. But actually it's not absolutely required. You can watch this one first if you want. Part A did a quick review of recent instruction, advice, tips how to do in the class, and discussed how to prepare a report of your research. It's still early days. You don't have to do that right away. Again, your reports are only due the last day of class. But I strongly recommend that you show me your reports before that so I can help you. Remember that your reports are 5 points. 5 points for a great job. 4 points means not bad. 3 means, well, I'll accept it, but it's not really what I hope for. Or 0. There's no 2 points or 1 point. 2 reports, total 10 points. If you don't do the reports, you cannot get an A in my class. It's that simple. If I don't accept your report and you get 0, you cannot get an A in my class. So the reports are important. Next, we're going to talk about research. We're going to use our third mini lecture on research. Let's make this slide go away. Don't need it. And the mini lecture is on research and comparing data. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. Or a whole lot bigger for you. Alright. So you'll notice that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 attached files. But actually, you don't really need all of them. One file has everything you really need. The others are basically supporting data. It shows you where I got information. Well, you might want to play with the Excel file. You certainly want analyzing existing data research. That's the core of our presentation today. We have about 30 minutes for this session. So there are 2 ways of defining research, which sometimes we call big R research and little r research. Remember that in previous classes we've talked about different ideas like surveying the field or doing a survey of people. That one of the ideas is creating new knowledge or reporting on existing knowledge. We'll talk a little bit more about that in about 2 minutes. So, when we analyze data, we have to make some choices, some assumptions. Just like that question of average. What's the best report? What tells us information in the best way? Mean, median, or mode, or editing, or things like that. Hang on a second. My cacao is popping up, and I need to answer it. Back in 30 minutes. I'm doing a lecture. That's my note to this person. I'm going to share it with that so you see. Click. Goodbye. Alright, so when we analyze data, we have to make some choices, some assumptions. For example, we talk about different kinds of average. Sometimes the question is, what are we comparing? And what are we comparing that to? So for example, we could ask, how much does something cost in a certain country? Now, some of you guys have traveled overseas. For example, you know that in, Japan is famous for being expensive. If you go to McDonald's in Japan and compare it to McDonald's in Korea, it costs more. Now, there are several ways we can compare. We could compare using an absolute price. For example, something costs 1,001 at Daiso in Korea, and we convert that and we say, oh, that's 85 cents in US. Okay? At the current exchange rate, 1,001 is about 85 cents. And then we buy it in Japan and it costs 150 yen. And we do the data and we say, oh, that cost about $1.20 in US. 80 cents or $1.20, that's 50% more. It's really expensive in Japan. Okay, so we're using an absolute price of the US dollar and comparing it strictly according to exchange rate between two countries. Or, instead of an absolute price, we can compare using a relative price, a comparison price. Now, a relative price doesn't mean Japan relative to Korea. It means the cost of something compared to another thing in that same country. So, how much does it cost compared to the average worker salary? Right? Or compared to some kind of a global index. Now, a global index is kind of sort of like an absolute price. It depends on how they do it. It could be more like relative. It could be more like absolute. And we're going to look at some indexes today. So one of the indexes that is kind of popular is the Big Mac index. And that's one of the articles. It's a story about how The Economist, which is a famous big international magazine, wanted to compare prices across countries, not just to compare exchange rate. Korea won is 1,187 won to the US dollar today, but to compare it with something you buy, like how much does a Big Mac cost in Tokyo, how much does a Big Mac cost in Seoul, how much does a Big Mac cost in Los Angeles, how much does a Big Mac cost in London. So that's the Big Mac index. Similar to that, we could see the latte index or the Starbucks index. I've given you some links if you want to play with those. There are more formal indexes. These ones were kind of for fun, and there are less formal indexes. Typically, a proper index doesn't just look at one thing, like McDonald's, but it looks at a basket of common things. For example, things that a family shops for in a weekly basis. So we call it a basket because it's like a shopping basket. So a family in Europe will often buy water, wine, bread, fruit, bananas, maybe it looks like a broccoli, I'm not sure. But they take the same basket of goods and they say, so what is a 1.5 liter bottle of water, the cheapest water in a typical store, cost compared to another country? What does a baguette cost in Paris? What does it cost in London? What do people use to eat? Similarly, it could be we hear about the most expensive city in the world. That's usually for business travel. So they're going to talk about things like hotel rooms and restaurants, and they decide very carefully what can we find that we can compare easily across countries. So it gets more challenging when the typical diet is different, right? Koreans don't eat a lot of bread or drink a lot of wine in a typical meal. French do. Americans less wine. Right? So in Korea, we might have to talk about the price of rice, which would make sense if we were comparing Korea, Japan, Thailand, Vietnam, China, countries that eat a lot of rice. Rice would be in our basket of goods. So creating these indexes is very, very challenging. We're going to talk about a little bit the Big Mac index, and we're going to talk about the price of cigarettes. Now, before we go too far, you need to know that this data is old. I created these pages a couple years ago. And in fact, we talked about this in class when some students were discussing the problem with the COVID era and whether professors are recycling their classes. And I said many professors recycle their lecture notes and their PowerPoint slides, and they say the same thing year after year. Well, yeah, we're busy. There's things that we recycle. For example, the materials in this lecture are recycled. This video is not recycled, but the materials that I'm using is recycled. So now we don't need the website. So I'm going to make it go away. Goodbye. Alright, so this is the principal information for today's second presentation. It's called Analyzing Existing Data Research.pdf. Analyzing Existing Data Research.pdf. So, oops, I hate when that happens. Research, big R versus little r. As discussed previously, big R research is the creation of new knowledge. Now, big R is my label, okay? You won't find very many places that talk about this. I won't say I invented it, but I didn't steal it on purpose, okay? There probably are other people that talk about big R research as creation of new knowledge. In the social sciences, where we work, this usually means one of two things: collecting new data, such as through a survey, or analyzing existing data in a different way. In our class, we are doing big R research. We are not doing little r research. Remember, little r research means summarizing or reporting on previous study. So this file is going to discuss, this second presentation is going to talk about analyzing existing data in a different way. So in the attached pages in this PDF, you're going to find existing data that has been analyzed in a different way. Got two pieces of data. One is the price of Marlboro cigarettes in many countries. Now, that information, the basic price, for example, we could say, for example, 5,001, was converted from the local currency to US dollars. So 5,001 today would be about $4 and 45 cents, maybe? Not sure exactly on the top of my head. And similarly, we're also going to look at the Big Mac index, comparing the price of Big Macs in many countries. By combining these two sets of data, we get new information, just like looking at Gyeongsangbuk-do cities and counties, and some second piece of data such as how many loteria are there in each of these cities and counties. Loteria data and Gyeongsangbuk-do data. So let's ask ourselves the first research question. How much does a pack of Marlboro brand cigarettes cost in different countries? Well, we can just collect the data, right? The data's already there. That's easy. Now, we use a full, complete research method like in science, like in your master's degree, you have to have a hypothesis and a null hypothesis, and then your sub-hypotheses, such as South Korea is less expensive than US, Southeast Asia is less expensive than South Korea, da-da-da-da-da. We make these predictions or these hypotheses. But for our class, you don't need to do this. Okay? I'd like for you to think about it, but you don't need to present it in your report. Okay, so a couple of notes here. Big Mac Index is based on the local price. That's a little bit not true because, especially in the US and in some other countries where franchises are owned by different people, prices can vary in the same city by a little bit, or from one city to the next, one country to the next, one county or one state to the next. Prices vary a little bit, and we don't really know how they found their official price for each country. It's fine, it's good enough. And then the cost of the Big Mac was converted to US dollars at the official currency rate at that time. That's not the price you pay in the bank, that's the bank-to-bank official exchange rate. The Big Mac's index data that we have includes a purchasing power parity number. We're not going to use it here, but we are going to kind of make a conversion. Okay? And the purchasing power parity, which we're not going to lecture, that's an economics class, is kind of sort of like the basket of goods calculation. All right? How much does somebody get paid a salary? How much does it cost to buy a basket of goods in that country? To compare countries. We're not doing that. Similar with the Big Mac Index, we don't know the details on how the Marlboro price was found. And we don't have any information about how they converted the exchange rate to US dollars. We just accept the data we get. We are not master's or doctoral students who have to dig deeper. We're just accepting the data we find. And of course, we know that in most countries, most people don't smoke American cigarettes. Right? In Korea, the most popular cigarettes are thin and this. But for purposes of conversion, comparing one country to another, we'll use the same kind of cigarette. And for this class, Marlboro's easy. Extra note, of course, if we talk about taxes, different countries tax foreign cigarettes maybe differently than local cigarettes. Okay, fine. We don't care. So that's a quick summary of the Big Mac Index. Now, I'm just showing you the data that I grabbed, and I put them all in one file for convenience. So here is data from the website, and we can find the website address here. www.cigaretteprices.net. I don't know if it works. Sure, let's try. Yep. So the website is here, and it lists all of the cigarette prices in euros and in US dollars. So they did the conversion for us. We don't know. How old is this data? I don't know. They don't report. Don't care. It's just data to play with. Okay? So that's one data set. And these are the pages that represent that data. Now here it says 2014. So you see this is the whole page. And data, cigarettes. Come on. Then, what I did is I used the Big Mac Index, which is the next file we're going to look at, and I compared data. Now I have an Excel file for that, so I'm going to close this. Come on. But before we look at the Excel file, here's the data that was available from a website, Statistica, and this is an incomplete URL, so it doesn't work. At that time, that reported the Big Mac index of 2014. The cigarette data that I used was 2014, and here is a chart that shows the cost of a cigarette based on US dollars after they did the conversion. And you can see Norway had very expensive cigarettes. And in 2014, cigarettes in Korea were not quite so expensive as now. They were $4, which was probably about 4,600원, something like that, around that time. I don't remember. And then some information about the Big Mac index, and the page is basically done. Okay, so there's a little piece of information about the Big Mac index. So what happened is what's this file? Oh, same. So what happened is I copied that data from cigarettes and from Big Mac, and you can see where I got the cigarette prices, and you can see here where I got the Big Mac index from the Economist magazine. Now what I had shown you was from a different company that had that pretty chart. This is the Excel file. So I downloaded this Excel file on the Big Mac index, and I copied the data from this web page and plugged it all together. Now I've got two different listings on this Excel file. One is alphabetical. It says alpha. I mean, listing the countries alphabetically. And this is information that would be America, I guess. Argentina, Australia, just purely alphabetical. And every so often I made a gray line, and I don't even remember why. Maybe because they're really big countries. Okay, United States. Maybe I just want to compare a few countries in my chart. I don't remember why I made gray, don't care. Maybe because the information's not complete. I don't remember. Anyway, we can see the local price as the Economist reports, the local price, the Korea won, if Korea is in here. Japan, South Korea. The local price was 4,100원. And the exchange rate was 1,023. That was in 2014, 2013. And nowadays the exchange rate is like 1,187. I think that's right. So anyway, it gives us a magic number. This number is the dollar price for a pack of cigarettes in Korea, Marlboros. Then this particular chart, this particular table is using PPP based on the Economist data. But I'm not going to use that, but I just downloaded this data from Excel just like that. Then I take the Big Mac index data, and it lists country price and dollar price. So let's take a look at Korea. And it says the Korean price compared to the US price was only 0.84. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean 84 cents. It just means compared to the regular US price, and we'll find the US price down here. See, the US price is 1. So they're comparing every price to the US price. Doesn't matter. We take the data as we get it, and then we work with it. So here we're going to say Big Mac price, cigarette price in dollars, and we'll do some adjustment. Don't worry about the adjustment. This was a particularly, especially strangely complicated thing I did, and you are not responsible for it. Okay? You are not responsible for it. It's just an example of collecting different sets of data. So what happens? Suddenly, I'm big. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so what happens? You collect two different sets of data. Whatever you want to compare, whatever you want to contrast. Make a question. Make a proposal if you want, but a question is enough. Are cigarettes prices in different countries similar to the prices of Big Macs? I mean, if a Big Mac is expensive in a country, cigarettes are also expensive. If Big Macs are cheap in a country, cigarettes are also cheap. That would be okay. Or do the thing that's much simpler. Work with things you know. Use cities, provinces, countries, and compare something that interests you. Okay? We can find out what is the most popular web browser in every country. That's one piece of data, right? 87% of people in the United States are using Google Chrome, and 67% of people in Korea are using Microsoft Edge, or whatever. So we can figure out what are the 2 or 3 most popular browsers. That's one piece of information, but we need to compare it to another thing. For example, let's say internet speed. We can find websites that tell us how fast is internet speed in different countries. Is choice of browser related to internet speed? I don't know. Let's find 12 countries. Some countries where internet speed is really fast, like Korea. Korea has basically the fastest internet in the world. Pretty much inside Korea. Now you're going outside Korea, less, but inside Korea, Korea has the fastest internet in the world. And the United States is quite fast. Australia, not so good. South Africa is terrible. So we look at, say, 12 different countries, and then we look at what is the first, second, and third, what's the ranking of browsers in those 12 countries. Maybe it's interesting. Maybe it's not. Maybe it doesn't tell us anything. But that's okay too. Okay? You don't have to come up with a magical, wonderful, great answer. Just show me that you are doing the work, you're trying to find an answer to a question, and you are reporting it in the format that I suggested. And if you show me your data, I'll say, yeah, that looks good. Or maybe you want to change it, how about this, or what about that? And if you show me your report, I'll say, that looks good, or, that's only 3 points. If you need to do something like this, and this, or this, to get full points. Or maybe, no, that's not what I want. Come on, I talked about this. Why don't you try that? I will coach you. I will help you as much as you want, but don't wait until the last week, because then I'm busy with many other students. Do work early. Let me help you. All right, and so that's the end of the second lecture, the mini lecture for research for today's class, which is scheduled for October 4th. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.